So we're all feeling vulnerable right in through here. We're worried about our jobs, we're stuck inside, we're worried about the people we care about. There's a deep vulnerability, not just in the US, not just in Australia, but across the world. But I want to talk for a moment about a different kind of vulnerability, right? What I want to call moral vulnerability. That's when you owe something in situations where it's difficult for you to pay. Right? Probably the classic case here is the Nazis. Right? In the case of Nazism, people were called to greater moral obligations than they would normally have in an everyday environment. Right? We have moral obligations here, most of which are not making us vulnerable, except for a number of essential workers. Right? Those folks are very vulnerable, exposing themselves, right, to the virus, right, without really, all right, being able to move away, except if they're going to feel guilty and feel as though they're not meeting their obligations. Right? But aside from the moral obligations we have now, from the moral vulnerability that some of us have now, right, there's still another lesson to be drawn from morality and from vulnerability. Right? And that's this. Right now, we're all obliged to stay home. Right? Except for the essential workers, we're obliged to maintain social distance. Why is that? Right? It's because of two things. Right? Because we recognize that our everyday behavior can have effects on others. That's one. But we also recognize that if our everyday behavior has effects on others, if it can make others' lives much more difficult, right? If it can make their lives more dangerous, we're obliged to do something about that. That's to say, our everyday behavior can affect others and can affect others in very deleterious ways, and that puts an obligation on us. But once we go there, right, once we recognize that, and we are recognizing, at least most of us in the case of the virus, once we recognize that, that opens out onto a wider moral territory. Because in a lot of our everyday behaviors, we can affect others in profound ways, both for better and for worse. And what the virus has done is brought that possibility to think about it to us. So think about this. Right? And when we buy everyday items at the store, we sometimes pack them in plastic. Right? That plastic, right, can go into the sea. I think there's apparently a island of plastic the size of Texas out there that we're contributing to, right, which is going to be deleterious for the environment. Right? When we drive or when we fly, right, we're creating carbon emissions. When we tour in a place, right, that, so let's say, is a nice beach in a third world country, are we sometimes contributing to destroying the culture of that country? When we buy an iPhone, are we contributing to the exploitation of workers around the world? Our everyday behavior has effects on others. And that everyday behavior that has effects on others is something we don't often think about, but we're starting to think about it, right, at least in regard to the coronavirus. And so, right, what we need to recognize as we move forward, as we move beyond the immediacy of this crisis, is that we occupy an ethical web. And I use the term ethical web to mean a web of obligations to one another, in which we recognize the effects that we have on one another and begin to try to mitigate at least some of the worst of those, and perhaps even contribute to making the world better, right, in our everyday actions. It's not that we can do everything, right? We're not going to be pure, right? We're not going to ever be in a situation in which we can say, all of the effects of my behaviors, right, are fine. Right? None of them cause difficulties for the environment, right, for other people, for non-human animals. But what we can do is begin to reflect on, right, the effects that our actions have and ask ourselves, what can I do? How can I try? How can I work to make things just a little bit better in the effects that I have than I'm doing now? If we can do that, right, then we can move the world individually, step by step, right, toward a better, more caring, more communal place than we have found it for many years.